Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, and welcome back to the Grey Movie Rad podcast. I am your host, Gaston, once again joined by my co-host, Jerryofdom,
Mm,
and today we are looking at the most recent film from Disney Animation Studios, 2021's Encanto.
I'm gonna put the pen down. Just playing with the pen.
um, you know what? I don't often start with the previewing thoughts, so why don't I start this time?
Oh, okay.
You can still start if you want to.
No.
Okay. Well, as is probably quite obvious, I am a big fan of Disney.
Really?
Yeah, I know my username is Gaston. Like it's pretty obvious. But before we get into this, I'd like to establish that Jerryofdom and I, we come from two very different places when approaching this film. Is he doesn't really care for musicals, and I absolutely love musicals. It's one of my favorite genres of movies. I just love it. However, despite being a big Disney fan, a big fan of musicals, I did not plan on seeing the movie in theaters at all. It just didn't grab my interest enough. Um, and then it came out, and I was seeing other movies at the time, and I heard a snippet from one of the songs, which I'm going to talk about more later, and I'm like, that was pretty catchy. That was intriguing. But I never ended up watching the film until it was released on Disney Plus at the end of 2021. Um, and now, to be fair, Disney Animation, their studio, they've had some pretty underwhelming films recently. Not to say they were terrible, but like Ralph Breaks the Internet and Frozen 2, even Raya, were not as good as they could have been. Um,
I
especially
haven't
Ralph.
watched any.
Especially Ralph Breaks the Internet for me is I love Wreck It Ralph and Ralph Breaks the Internet, the sequel. It should have been so good, and it was still good, but it could have been so much better. So I would boil it down to I was cautious about going and seeing Encanto. Jerry?
I like old Disney movies. Like I actually like Disney movies. Just music parts, you know. But like Lion King, the classics. We got Moana, one of the more recent classics. There are those good ones, but they don't always strike me as I want to go see this in Kanto. But the only thing I cared about was the capybara. Other than that, I was like, eh.
In case you, the listener, doesn't know, a capybara is the world's largest rodent. Don't let that freak you out. It does not look like a rat. It's an incredibly cute animal and absolutely amazing. Look up some pictures of
They like
capybaras.
lemons and will jump in water.
Yeah, and they
They're
are
also
like
friends with every animal.
they are the chillest animal ever. Do yourself a favor and look up a capybara. um, okay, so our light spoiler plot sum up here. Encanto tells the story of the amazing Madrigal family, where every member has a special power except for one, our protagonist, Mirabel. When their powers are threatened from an unknown source, it is up to the powerless Mirabel to solve the mystery and save their gifts. That's a pretty nice trailer presented plot without
Yeah.
revealing too much. So let's start in with the characters. Buckle up, folks. There's a lot of characters to talk about in this film. This is
Do I
probably
remember half of their names? No.
this is probably the largest main cast in a Disney film ever. Like it is huge. So I had to leave a couple characters who are important out because they weren't as main, but there's one in particular that I will mention later, but um, we're just not going to analyze him too deeply. So let's start with Mirabel Madrigal, who's voiced by Stephanie Beatriz of Brooklyn Nine-Nine fame, Rosa Diaz. She is
So
a.
weird.
I know. If that's all you know from her, this will surprise you.
Oh yeah.
She's a 15-year-old girl who, unlike her family, does not have any special gift. One of the directors, Jared Bush, described her as imperfect and weird and quirky, but also deeply emotional and incredibly empathetic. I'll start with Mirabel and just say that I like her a lot as a protagonist. She's very well written, and Rosa Diaz, that voice work, it sounds nothing like Rosa, but it's very well done. She's easy to relate to because as average humans, we don't have these fantastic gifts that you see in pretty much every movie nowadays, be it Star Wars or Marvel or DC. There's all these people with fantastic gifts and abilities. So she's relatable in that sense that she's this observer to this world of incredibleness. And she's just a lot of fun. And she reminds me of my sister-in-law and her looks quite a lot. Go ahead.
She was my favorite character, actually.
Mm.
I really enjoyed her character, as you mentioned, very relatable, but not only in just being around all those different powers and all that, but also just being like more downhearted than like there's lots of superheroes that are downhearted. I mean, they bring you down, but she really was like makes you relate to a point that it doesn't even matter that they have powers. It's just relatable.
Mm. There's certainly a lot of like real raw emotions
Oh yeah.
presented in this story. That is an easy jump off point because that's like it's something you would see in real life. So let's talk about. I'm already
Getting the
abuela.
Spanish slang.
Well, it's abuela is what was I'm like say it right, say it right, say it right. Abuela Alma Madrigal, who's voiced by Maria Cecilia Botero, the 75-year-old grandmother and family matriarch. Uh, she has endured so much and will do anything to protect her family and home. Why don't you start off with Abuela?
I was not expecting the story that they brought out of her. I'm not going to touch on it too much, but it was very much like you know. But she gives off this vibe as someone that is very much like, I don't like her. You know, she gets annoying. And then you realize why later on, which is spoilers. But it's such an interesting layered character that you wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
expect.
Yeah, I agree. She's not my favorite character, but she may be the best written character. It just takes you down a path you were not expecting, but it doesn't feel out of place. It like that makes sense, not that's weird. And technically, she's the antagonist, but she's not evil, and she never feels evil. You sympathize and you understand her, especially at the end. Pretty well done. So now we're gonna break the rule of the film here, which they break themselves. We're going to talk about Bruno. Bruno Madrigal, who is voiced by John Leguizamo. Mirabel's 50-year-old ostracized uncle who has the ability to see the future. He is the brother of Pepa and Julieta, more on them later, and Abuela's only son. He disappeared around 10 years before the start of the film. I'd like to start off by saying that Bruno is so innocent and so good. He is funny and completely unexpected because he's not painted to be such until you actually meet him. He is super heartwarming, and he easily tops Sid the Sloth for my new favorite John Leguizamo role. Like, mind you, with how each Ice Age film, Sid got more annoying, Bruno is just fantastic and even tops Ice Age 1 Sid for me for my favorite role from this guy. It's so good.
He's like that cool uncle that you always want to hang out with but never shows up to the gatherings.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I was surprised, but at the same time I was like, they're setting him up to be such an evil guy.
Mm-hmm.
He can't be that bad.
Yeah.
And it's more interesting to realize what had happened, and you really realize, man, so that's what happened, and it was an interesting twist.
Mm-hmm. I love the so you're the one back here fixing the cracks? No, 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 I'm too scared to go near that Hernando fixes the cracks. Who is Hernando? He puts his hood on. I am Hernando and I am afraid of nothing. And then I am Jorge and I make dust spackle. It's so funny.
I like the part with the rats where he's like, "You want to watch a show?" And then he's like just putting the rats in there, like, "What's happening?"
So good. So now, this isn't the order that I would have put the characters in, but this is the order Wikipedia did, and I'm like, it's a weird way to talk about the characters, so we'll go in this order. Why not? So let's talk about Felix Madrigal, who's voiced by Mauro Castillo. He's Mirabel's uncle and Peppa's husband, who balances her out. More on her in just a little bit. Bush, the director, stated that Felix is just there to have a good time. As he married into the Madrigal family, he has no powers. Afro.
Okay.
You want to start, or do you want me to start?
You can start.
Felix is a lot of fun. And his character design. There's just something about it that just screams uncle. You look at him and you're like, that is an uncle. Even though he has children and is a father, that is an uncle. And he has some of the best comedic moments in the film, with a lot of background little one-liners that if you're not paying attention you miss. They're just like little zingers. And he does perfectly upset his wife, Peppa. And it makes them, when they're together, they are such a fun comedy to watch because she is so high strung and he's so mellow. It's great.
Yeah, he's an enjoyable guy. I mean, again, another cool uncle.
Absolutely.
But this is the cool uncle that shows up.
Yeah, yeah.
And he does well in his role. It's not major or anything, but he is there and he's a good supporting character.
Yeah. Did you, when you see him, do you see Maui? Because I see like a smaller version of Maui with a beard from Moana. Do you see that too? Because I see that. Yeah. It's kind of funny, actually. So next we're going to talk about Luisa Madrigal, who's voiced by Jessica Darrow, Mirabel's 19-year-old second oldest sister. Co-writer Charisse Castro-Smith described Luisa as someone who carries all the burdens and never complains. She has superhuman strength, but harbors anxiety about falling behind in her duties and letting her family down. I would like to just kind of like say that when did superhuman strength become immediately paired with superhuman invulnerability? Because I don't see how they go hand in hand, but it seems like everybody who's super strong is now super durable. Like even Mr. Incredible. Like, I feel like it probably originated from Superman, but invulnerability was one of Superman's powers. It didn't come from his strength. But that aside the point. Do you want to start with her, or you want me to?
I enjoyed her character, and when she's talking about the certain things that are happening to her powers, when certain things happen, there's more emotion than you would expect from the brute.
Mm-hmm.
You see that. Yeah, it's not necessarily focused on, but you see a more humanized side to a character that is that big and strong, powerful person.
Mm-hmm. I have never, in my entire life, related to a character more than Luisa Madrigal. Her entire story, her character arc, everything about her is my life to a T.
So you're a girl.
Well, aside from that part. And her song, especially, which I'll talk about more later, brought me to tears first time I heard it all the way through. Because it's me. Definitely my favorite character. It's. You watch this movie, you're going to know more about Gaston than you ever did before without me having to say anything. It's kind of spooky. So let's talk about Julieta Madrigal, voiced by Angie Cepeda, and that's Mirabel's mother, and Augustine's wife, who can heal people with her cooking. She's the sister of Peppa and Bruno and Abuela's daughter. Julieta, her design, it's like how Felix looks like an uncle. Julieta looks like a mom. There's just I don't know what it is, but I look at her and I just think mom. It's a mother, absolutely.
You know how fitting her power is?
Yeah.
Every mom's like, oh, this food will make you better.
Yeah.
And then you're like, yes, it will.
Mom's cooking, exactly. And she reminds me a lot of my own mother, if I'm being honest. She's sweet, kind, will do anything for her kids. I really do like Julieta. She's not in it much, but she's really a really kind character. Kind eyes.
Yeah, good mom.
Yeah.
That's the most I gotta say.
So now let's talk about Peppa. Peppa Madrigal is voiced by Carolina Gaitan. Mirabel's aunt, Felix's wife, and her thing is her mood controls the weather. Obviously, the sister of Julieta and Bruno, and Abuela's daughter. She can create storms and hurricanes and rain when she has strong emotions. You want to start with Peppa?
This seems like my mom. It's funny how she is because she's always like brings in a cloud and she's like, get away, and she slams the door on the cloud sometimes. It's just the funny reactions in the background when you see her have it, or when the part she's like, you better be happy it's not a hurricane, and you're sitting there
Yeah.
like, this feels like a mom.
Well, I love near the start of the film when she's having her little panic attack and the tornado's coming, and it's one of those Felix little one-liners that you might miss. And she's there pacing back and forth and like, oh, everything has to go well, everything has to go well. And then Felix is like, honey, you're tornadoing the flowers, the flowers. And it's, I love it. She is so high-strung.
Yeah.
But it's another thing, like, I see her and I think aunt. Like, the designs in this film of the characters is fantastic.
To me, she looks like an aunt but has a mother personality.
Yes, I agree with that. And it's just the opposite of what I said with Felix. The high-strung nature with mellow Felix makes for a great duo, a good combination. They sing the first and longest verse of the now famous song that you've no doubt heard of, We Don't Talk About Bruno, which took the world by storm in the end of 2021, early 2022. And they're just, the way they play off each other in the song itself is, it just shows you their relationship. It's an easy way to understand these characters. Just listen to that song. It's pretty awesome. So let's move along to, you can see that we're moving faster through the characters because there's so many people.
Yeah.
Isabella Madrigal, voiced by Diane Guerrero, who's Mirabel's 21-year-old oldest sister, who the other director, Byron Howard, described as perfect and a success. Her thing is she can make flowers bloom everywhere, but she secretly struggles to keep up her glamorous disposition. And Isabella's role in this film, I actually like the where it took. It kind of subverted my expectations with her.
Yeah.
Because very much the film is told through Mirabel's impression of her family. So you see her character in a certain way up until a big moment in the beginning of the third act of the film, where it reveals what she hides under the surface, which is a reference to a different song. But and then that whole sequence with her and Mirabel's reconciliation, beautifully animated and pretty catchy song too. Not gonna lie.
She almost marries Markiplier.
Yeah, that's the guy who we're not going to dive too deep on. Mariano looks like Markiplier, especially towards the end of Unus Annus. It's Unus Annus Markiplier. Absolutely.
She, you know, again, you don't really like her at the beginning because she's a bit of a butt, and then you're like, wow, she just puts on this like front for everyone because that's how she has to be.
Mm-hmm. So it's a pretty well written film. So we got 4 more people to talk about. This is and we haven't. I don't even think we leave the family in talking about the characters. That's the size of this cast. So let's talk about Augustine Madrigal, voiced by Wilmer Valderrama, Mirabel's father and Julieta's husband, who Bush described as accident prone, which is absolutely true. You want to start with Augustine, or would you like me to start?
How many times did this man get stung by bees?
Oh my god. It looks like at least 70.
Yeah. He looks like Mickey Mouse at the end of the film.
I see that, yeah.
And it's funny how he reacts to things because it's very like that innocent father that's like, I don't know what we're supposed to do, but we should do something. You know? It just gives off that like father that's like, I need to do something. I don't have a clue.
He is so heartfelt, and the slapstick with him is great. And I feel like because he does have a lesser role and he doesn't have any powers, I feel like a lot of people overlook him when watching the film, but do yourself a favor and pay attention to like some of the background antics with him, and the vocal performance for not many lines is super strong. He's just I really like him. In my opinion, he's a pretty special character. Um, so let's talk about Camilo Madrigal, voiced by Renzi Felez. Pepe and Felix's 15-year-old son, Dolores and Antonio's brother, and Mirabel's cousin who can shapeshift. The writer, Castro Smith, stated that Camilo is someone who's just trying to find their place in the family. They use his shapeshifting ability for great comedic effect multiple times.
Yeah.
He's not in too many scenes, but he legitimately elevates every scene he is in. And he has a surprisingly good voice to boot when he sings that part of "We Don't Talk About Bruno."
Oh yeah. I was expecting more from him because he was such a fan favorite with a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of people love Camilo.
And then he wasn't in it that much, and it caught me off guard. I was surprised.
Mm.
But he played his role well. I wouldn't say he was my favorite. No, he was a good supporting character.
Yeah. And that's true for pretty much the entire Peppa side of the family, is they're really in the supporting roles, but I feel like a sequel could just focus on that side of the family and be just as interesting as focusing on Mirabel's side.
Focus on the little son.
Antonio. Speaking of segues, Antonio Madrigal is our next topic, voiced by Ravi Cabo Conyers. Peppa and Felix's 5-year-old youngest child, and the brother of Dolores and Camilo, and of course Mirabel's cousin. Now, he has a special relationship with Mirabel, looks up to her, and considers her as a big sister. His power is he can speak to and understand animals. Would you like to start with? Would you like to start with little Antonio?
Cute little boy.
Absolutely.
He's like that little brother you want.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so funny when you realize he can talk to animals. And there's those cute moments. There's those wholesome moments with them. And he plays that good role of he seems like a little brother to the main protagonist.
Yeah.
And the animals are great too.
Yes. I agree with what you say, but I do have actually a little complaint about him, and it's nothing against the character or the actor. It's the story. He's at the forefront of this plot at the start of the film. And then the writers kind of seem to forget he's in the movie for pretty much all of Act 2 until there's that brief scene with Bruno and Mirabel, and then not again till the end of the film. And because of those reasons, he ends up being my least favorite character, but I want to stress there's nothing wrong with Antonio. He's a cute kid with some very heartfelt moments, a great acting performance from this young actor. It's just the writers kind of did him dirty by not including him in more of the plot.
You know how I felt throughout this movie is that there was a little bit of few plot holes. Like they took sections, like between writing each part, kind of. Because
I
some
can see
things
that.
feel a little off.
I can
And
see
it's
that.
probably because of COVID.
Yeah,
But
probably.
is what it is.
Yeah. And finally, let's talk about Dolores Madrigal, who's voiced by the singer Adassa. I didn't bother looking to see a full name. I used the stage name. Like if I would use Beyonce or something like that instead of the full name. So Peppa and Felix's 21-year-old oldest daughter, the sister of Camilo and Antonio and Mirabel's cousin. Her thing is super hearing. If you ask me, her thing is being able to run a mile in about 30 seconds. Just watch the opening song and you'll see what I mean. uh, and this is another character who's really popular. And she is pretty funny and has a power that you don't often see.
No.
And I love how they make her power impact her in that, like, she talks softer than everyone else and, like, she moves quieter. It gives off a really unique feel to her. And I love the squeaks. I know.
Every time she hears something, just...
Yeah, I love it. It's so good.
Yeah, I enjoyed her more than, how everyone enjoyed the shapeshifter cousin. This
Camilo.
one I enjoyed a lot more. I'm horrible with names, so I'm not even gonna try attempting names. That's why I just say a building. But I enjoyed her a lot because she has a bit of importance to the story with how things progress and what ties certain things together.
True. So that's how you cover, how many people is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 characters at rapid speed right there. Um, so let's go into the effects and cinematography. And as per usual with Disney, the visuals are amazing.
Oh
That's
yeah.
gorgeous. They always go above and beyond with their animated films, and I think it's because everyone knows that Disney is animation, so they're
Yeah.
like, we're not gonna get topped by anyone else. I mean, like last time we were talking about Into the Spider-Verse, which had a very unique comic style and it looks great. Encanto looks better, but it is supposed to because they were going
Yeah.
for a comic like this one's going for a wow factor.
Yeah.
And I will say that Encanto even goes above a lot of Disney's stuff because the tropical setting is so
It
beautifully
lets them
done.
play with colors.
Yeah, and it's so beautifully done. It just brings it to life. The jungle is alive. The water in this film. It's a pretty film.
Oh yeah, there's different effects that they had to toy with how people's abilities work and all that too. And it really just lets them like splash a color palette straight onto their screen.
Absolutely. Anything else you want to say for that part?
Uh no, I like there's it's just done well with cues and how certain characters interact and they play well with
That leads us into the cinematography portion, and it's solid,
yeah.
just like Disney usually is.
It's
But
hard to comment on
when
cinematography
it's
in an
animation,
animated movie.
yeah. But the one place where the cinematography really shines is during the musical sequences when they do
Yes.
the classic fallback of having the songs take place outside of the reality of the story and like that dreamscape with We Don't Talk About Bruno and Surface Pressure, and even What Else Can I Do to a degree has
Yeah.
those factors to it, and it's really, really well done. It feels like classic Disney, like how I Just Can't Wait to Be King and Lion King takes place in an entirely differently colored area that's more vibrant and cartoony because it's supposed to be
Um,
like out of reality.
My favorite part of that is when they do the Timon and Pumbaa movie, and you see them like,
Yeah,
why is the sky different? What's
yeah,
happening?
yeah. Yeah, it's great. So let's transition to the writing and score. And as has been alluded to quite a bit, the writing is pretty top notch. It's Disney going back to form of well written films.
Yeah.
Uh, because, and I keep on picking on this movie because I had such high expectations for it, but Ralph Breaks the Internet, the ending is a mess. I will just
Really.
say that. It
I've
was
never watched.
The ending is a mess and could have been better written. But this is well written film. And it is a deep and moving story about family, and it works so well with morals that will always apply
I
and
was
matter.
caught off guard with how deep they go with a lot of things, but it really brings to life like how studios and just people in real life have really taken notice of other people's inside problems they don't bring up presently, and they use that to their advantage in this movie where they tied those powers that makes them show off these strong sides, but shows that they are actually the complete opposite to their power.
Mm-hmm. It's a powerful story, and whereas some movies run the risk of having their moral not apply in the future, like for example Disney's dinosaur moral about standing up to bullying, once you're out of school that won't come up as often, so it's kind
No.
of a very limited application for the moral. This one will always matter about
Yeah.
family. um, and another thing Disney does so well is going from how deep it gets. The humor in this film is extremely
Oh
top tier
yeah.
as well. The jokes and the one-liners are great.
Every scene with Bruno is like hilarious.
I love when he stands up in the smoke and then like climbs up and then just bye, and runs away, and then knock, 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 knock on wood. I love it. It's so funny.
The part where he's running out of the house and all he sees is him put on a bucket and then just go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's so funny. Um, and now the score, and obviously with a musical, the songs, the soundtrack. Um, it's awesome. The score, solid, engaging, but with any musical, it's the songs we want to talk about right now. Surface Pressure, My Life, my favorite song. We Don't Talk About Bruno took the world by storm. And there's not a weak song in the bunch, in my opinion. And I have one song I want to point out particularly that a lot of people probably won't, but do you have anything you want to...
So, my least favorite song is We Don't Talk About Bruno.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And it was so hyped around and all that, and it wasn't the one that I was like, eh. The one that was my favorite it's the second last one, I think, where they're on the river, and they show the backstory of the...
Dos Oruguitas.
That song is my favorite.
That's actually the one I wanted to point out, because how brave it is to use the Spanish only version in the film for the English audience. And it doesn't detract from it at all. It elevates that scene. That scene made me cry. The first time I watched it, it got me good.
It was an intense emotional scene, and you're like, oh.
Yeah. In case you haven't noticed yet, I cry a lot more than Jerryofdom does.
No, nah.
I do.
Wait, no, I was agreeing with you, but like, in a weird way.
It's very well done. So let's go to the heavy spoilers. Warning, warning, heavy spoiler time, and chunk number 1, here we go. The Madrigal family is blessed with powers derived from a candle that was given a miracle the day that family patriarch Pedro died. 50 years later, the still burning candle protects a nearby thriving town, and its magic grants gifts to each Madrigal descendant at the age of 5, which they use to serve the villagers. However, Bruno is vilified and scapegoated for his gift of precognition and has disappeared 10 years before the start of the film, while Julieta's youngest daughter, 15-year-old Mirabel, has never been granted her own gift. So there's the basic setup of this story. Not much to talk about there unless you have something you want to say.
No, I like the way the scenery looks when they're talking to like little protagonists. And I'm great with names.
Mirabel.
Mirabel. Tiny Mirabel. And it's just the way the emotions convey, because you're just getting put into the film, and there's a lot of mystery to a lot of things that you're like, huh?
Mm. So the film proper kicks off with, on the 5th birthday of Peppa's youngest son, Antonio, he gains the ability to communicate with animals, and the family poses for a picture, unintentionally excluding Mirabel. Leaving the celebration, Mirabel suddenly sees the casita, the house, cracking and the candle's flame flickering, but her warnings go unheeded when the casita appears undamaged to the others. After overhearing Alma, Mirabel resolves to save the miracle's magic. So there's essentially our Act 1. Really quickly summed up. It's not a long movie.
Yeah. And, well, the opening song we didn't really touch on, but I like the way it's done for the story there, because it does a good way at introducing characters, but me being me went, that's a lot of people. I forget everyone now.
You're the little kid. There's so many people. How do you keep them all straight? Yeah. So in that opening part, the 2 songs occur: the Family Madrigal, and Waiting on a Miracle. Both songs, in my opinion, are great. I love Mirabel's solo there. Disney does those solo I Want songs so well, like Part of Your World, Colors of the Wind, all that sort of thing, Just Around the River Bend. And this...
What's Scar's song?
Well, that's the villain song, be prepared.
But he wants to be the king, so
the I Want song from Lion King would be Just Can't Wait to Be King.
Well, Scar kind of does that, but in an evil way.
Yeah, so the difference is the I Want song is the protagonist. It's them singing about what they want, like out there. is the I Want song of Hunchback, and a tremendous song for another day.
Oh yeah.
It's my favorite Disney song, but more on that another time, perhaps. And Family Madrigal, like you said, introduces all the characters. It does it well. It feels good. And it's a good time. It's a
Yeah.
very catchy song.
Oh yeah.
It's good stuff. So now the breakdown gets a little more precise here as more of the plot happens. The next day, she talks to her older sister Luisa, who confesses to feeling overwhelmed by her near constant obligations. Surface Pressure, my favorite song. It's pressure like tip, 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 that'll never stop. Whoa. She suggests to go check Bruno's room in a forbidden tower in the casita, which may explain what is happening to everyone's powers. There, Mirabelle discovers a cave and recovers pieces of a slab of opaque emerald glass. After Mirabelle narrowly escapes, Luisa discovers that her gift is weakening. After her family reminds her why Bruno is vilified, we don't talk about Bruno, Mirabelle reassembles the glass, depicting a picture of herself standing unharmed in front of a broken casita, surmising that she will destroy the family. Doo-doo-doo-doom.
I like how the way they introduce that her older sister is having that problem is the cousin noticing that she's like
The eye
twitching and all that.
twitching, yeah.
And then that whole like table scene in the bar and
So
they're just
funny.
all freaking out and all that's hilarious.
It's this chunk specifically is extremely well done, from animation to the songs to the vocal work. Bruno's tower has so many funny little moments in it. Bruno, your
Like her
tower
saying,
sucks.
bird. At least I have a friend. Hey.
I'm glad you brought up the toucan, because Disney's seeming good luck charm since 2013 has been to put Alan Tudyk in, actually since 2012. It's been put Alan Tudyk in every film to some capacity. He does the vocal effects of the toucan.
Hey.
He's still going. He's in every single Disney film since Wreck-It Ralph.
I love the toucan's eye expressions if you pay attention to them because there's like little things that he does and it's hilarious.
It's great. So our next chunk is later that evening. Mirabelle's oldest sister, Isabella, who can make the plants and flowers grow, in case you forgot, is scheduled to become engaged to neighbor Markiplier, Mariano Guzman. After an awkward dinner, which is probably the funniest scene in the film.
Oh yeah.
Mirabelle's oldest cousin Dolores, who heard everything, reveals everything about Mirabelle's discovery, causing the casita to crack again, ruining the night as Markiplier's nose gets broken. And Peppa inadvertently causes a hurricane in the kitchen.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, this sequence.
It was so chaotic.
Well, I love the, like, Camilo, fix your face. And because his face is all, like, drooping as he's freaking out about that. Then when things start to go wrong, he turns into the baby with a mustache as a disguise. Just like, nope. It's so funny.
And the part when the cousin listens in, and it's her dad like freaking out, and like, well, I don't know what to do. Throw it in the bag. I don't know.
Yeah. Everything has to be perfect for tonight. So until everything's done, you did not go into Bruno's tower. You did not find this prophecy. You are not going to ruin everything. The magic is fine. We don't tell anyone. I know. I love
And then
it.
it runs.
Yeah.
And then just stare the entire
Yeah,
time,
and
just
she's
like,
oh, it's so funny. It's like everyone be cool, and then like people start like sweeping the lawn or something because they have no idea how to be cool. That's what that scene is like. Steven, like, Dad the Caribbean's like, it's so funny.
And then when they're sitting at the table and those rats show up and start taking the pieces, and you're like, oh my goodness.
Oh, it's so funny. So our next little chunk here is, as everyone flees the chaos, Mirabelle follows said group of rats and discovers a secret passage behind a portrait where she finds Bruno. He reveals that he broke the vision to avoid putting Mirabelle at odds with the family and the townspeople, and chose to live in exile within the walls because he still loves his family. At Mirabelle's urging, Bruno reluctantly agrees to have another vision. which initially goes the same way as the previous one, but the emergence of a golden butterfly causes it to show her embracing Isabella instead. This is where the capybara has a shining moment. This scene.
When they're doing the vision, it's just like,
Because as we mentioned, capybaras are so chill. The vision for Bruno, it's this big storm of green wind flowing around, and it's like
and
Bruno's like got his eyes behind Mirabel's, and then the capybara's just chill, just like okay.
anyways.
It's so good. And so this is when Bruno enters the story, and as we mentioned, he is so endearing. He is so funny with that
So
awkward laughter and
this is where one complaint of mine comes in for this movie, is the plot hole of Bruno left when she was still like 5 years old. You know, so if Bruno was there, she would have seen him and met him. But
yeah,
they make it seem like she's never met this dude in her entire life.
yeah. That's
Like,
something I noticed too. It's like now I know when you remember when you're 5 isn't necessarily easy, but I remember things when I was 5, and
oh yeah,
I feel like I would remember a family member.
yeah.
That did strike me as odd as well. It's like, how did you forget Bruno?
There was a lot of odd things about the whole connections, and I was like, all right, this is a little odd because everyone else knows who Bruno is, but only she doesn't.
Yeah. Although one thing I will say, contrary to Mirabel, is Camilo. His description of Bruno, which is obviously wrong, the 7-foot frame, rats along his back is obviously true. But the interesting thing is, to little Camilo would have been about 5. He may have well thought that that was a 7-foot tall man
Yeah,
creeping around.
but isn't he supposed to be younger than the main protagonist, or
No, they're
not?
the same age
Oh,
according to the directors. They're both 15.
so somehow he knows
I know
him.
it's
That
so
that
weird.
was my big thing. That was like,
Yeah, I understand that complaint absolutely. Um, so a couple more chunks here. Our next one, Mirabel reluctantly apologizes to Isabella, and when it doesn't go well, a sibling fight that felt frighteningly real to a real sibling fight. Isabella abruptly yells that she never wanted to marry Markiplier and is burdened by her image of perfection. Cue the very catchy song "What Else Can I Do." Um, as during this song, Mirabel and Isabella patch their relationship, and Mirabel helps Isabella accept her own imperfect self and embrace it. And as they embrace each other, the candle is strengthened and the cracks begin to heal. However, Abuela sees the pair messing up the town with a bunch of weird plants and accuses Mirabel of causing the family's misfortunes out of spite for having no gift. Oof. Mirabel in turn blames Abuela for overpressuring the family. Their rising argument weakens the candle once again, creating a fissure that splits a nearby mountain, like full blown splits a mountain, and demolishes the casita. Despite Mirabel's efforts to save the candle, it burns out in her hands, leaving all the Madrigals powerless. While the family assesses the damage, Mirabella runs away. A lot happens in that chunk.
oh yeah. But the song, the color palette was my.
Beautiful.
They're just like every color we know. Bang, 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 bang,
Yeah,
bang.
absolutely beautiful.
I think the design for that one in particular was the best, just like visually.
Visually, I agree. Absolutely. I love the I love Augustine in this chunk when he stands up for Mirabel to Abuela. Because it's like this whole time he's this really fun, having a good time character, and then it's like I was doing what was best for my daughter, and like puts his foot down, and it's like, go father, do
Yeah.
it, do it, man, do it. It's a great scene, and then the argument between Abuela and Mirabel it stings for me because you know they both are just wanting what's best for the family, and it's also a very realistic argument that it stings. It's kind of like ooh, ooh, and they keep both saying things that they're going to regret. You're just kind of like ooh,
Yeah.
ooh. Um,
Mm.
as pretty great sequence. And the visuals of the casita going down, it felt so palpably like danger. It was great. And then, as you mentioned, with Bruno putting the bug out and charging through the wall to get out of the collapsing house is so
Just
fun.
imagine him being like, I'm the Juggernaut. Bang!
No, he's Jorge and he makes the spackle. He's the Jorge knot. This is great. Our second last chunk here. After several hours, Abuela finds Mirabel crying at the river, where Pedro, her husband, died. And she explains how. An armed conflict, specifically, this would have been the Spanish Inquisition, forces Pedro and Alma Madrigal, a young married couple, to flee their home village in Colombia with their infant triplets, Julieta, Pepa, and Bruno. After Pedro rescues Abuela and the babies by sacrificing himself to the attackers, the candle miraculously attains those qualities, never dying and giving the gifts, and it also blasts away the attackers and creates the casita, which, in case, I feel like I forgot to mention, the house is alive and quite the interesting character itself.
Oh, yeah.
It has a lot of personality. And it makes the valley, raises the mountains to protect the people that Pedro sacrificed himself to protect. And then, determined to preserve the magic, Abuela ignored the toll her own expectations of perfection was taking on her family, which is shown in a very powerful sequence of Abuela walking down the hallway. And it shows Bruno, like, being afraid of her, and then Isabella the same way. Is just the pressure she was placing on it, family expectations. And she accepts responsibility for what happened, she pushed too hard. This is that Dos Oruguitas sequence, which made me cry. That after hearing the story, Mirabel tells her that despite her flaws, she has united and protected the family all these years. As they reconcile, a golden butterfly flies past, as seen in Bruno's vision. Yeah. And then Bruno himself arrives on horseback and clumsily dismounts and confronts Abuela to defend Mirabel, but gets an unexpected hug instead, as Abuela's just happy to have her son back. They reunite with the other Madrigals, and the townspeople help the family to rebuild the casita. There's one more chunk after that, but there's a bit to unpack in this one.
Oh, yeah. This, man, the visuals, the emotions, and everything all coming together, and seeing a lot of behind, why her grandmother was like that and how other things were. And that's backstory of the grandma.
Oh, it's
what a sad story.
It's such a tearjerker.
And then Bruno showing up was quite hilarious once again.
Bruno is great. He is definitely a highlight of this film. Bruno is awesome. And then I love that bit with it's funny and then so heartwarming and back to back with the they're getting back together there, and then Camilo is standing beside Felix and he's like, well, we have no house, and then like he gets up with them, what? I can't say we don't have a house. Look, points at the rubble. What's that? Not a house. It's great. And then the song "All of You" happens, which has the absolutely hysterical part from Markiplier. Hey Mariana, why something? I just have so much love inside. Songwriting at its best. I'm not making fun of it. It was hilarious. He actually hooks up with Dolores, which is, nice.
Well, they talk about it in the very first song, how she has this love that she can't reach, and it was Bruno's prophecy. That was the Don't Talk About. Yeah. And also the other one.
So it was We Don't Talk About Bruno that had Dolores' reveal that she likes Mariano. Mariano, so he's actually like a pretty important character. He just doesn't have a ton of screen time.
Yeah.
But he's like present all throughout. He's introduced in the first song, and you see him quite a lot throughout the film.
Markiplier was there and strong.
Yeah. Isabella, your boyfriend's here. With the flex and everything. It's like, it's Markiplier.
They should have made him shorter.
Yeah, exactly. He's too tall for Markiplier. If Markiplier ever sees this, he's gonna be, hey. Our final chunk here. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention, and the heartwarming part is when the townspeople show up to help.
Yeah.
That is such a nice scene. And what they say, we have no gifts, but we are many, and we will do anything for you. I was like, oh, that's so sweet. Because as we mentioned, the Madrigals have helping the entire town all of their life because of the gift. Once the job is done, the Madrigals give Mirabelle a new doorknob engraved with an M, representing the entire family as well as her as an individual. That's another scene that almost made me tear up with the we need a doorknob. We made this one for you. It's like, oh. And then what they say is, we see how brave you've been, and now see yourself in turn. You're the real gift kid. It's like, oh, goodness. It's so well written. And as she attaches it to the front door, the magic is back and the family gets their powers back.
Yeah.
And the Madrigals pose for another group picture to celebrate, this time with Mirabelle and Bruno included. And then Casita shoves them together for a hilarious closing frame as the movie ends. Encanto.
It wasn't bad. I didn't have much expectations because I was like, But I was like, we should do it.
So favorite scene and least favorite scene. Do you want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
I think my favorite scene is the backstory.
Dos oraguitos.
And my least favorite is just out of like annoyance was the first part where they're all taking the family picture and they're just ignoring her. Just out of a story perspective, it was like, I hate this scene.
My favorite scene, as is probably no surprise, is the entire surface pressure sequence. But even include the breakfast in that, because the breakfast scene is very funny, and then it just becomes so painfully relatable to me. It's a mood. And I had a hard time picking a least favorite scene, so the one I picked was for the same reason you did, is that it hurts to watch. That being said, it's extremely well done, but that's the argument between Abuela and Mirabelle. It is super well acted, really important, but it's hard to watch because you're just like, ooh, ooh. So, are you, the listeners, ready for what will probably be the biggest difference in our overall ratings thus far? I'm anticipating that.
Do you think we'll have the lower one?
I can almost guarantee you will.
Okay.
Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go?
I'll give it a 78.
So for me, this is an easy 90%. I still don't think it's our biggest gap, because hands down, this is the best Disney has been in years. Up until Moana, which is 5 years before this is easily better than every movie post Moana that they've done. And we're going to review Moana not next time, but the time afterwards. And it'll be interesting to see. I'm looking forward to rewatching and seeing which one do I like more, Moana or Encanto. And what's interesting...
That also depends if we find the movie next week.
Yeah, also true. But the interesting thing with Moana and Encanto is that the songs, which are a highlight in both, were both written by Lin-Manuel Miranda. The man is a genius, and he just did the songs for both of these incredible Disney films. And I expected yours to be lower, if I'm being honest, because like I said earlier, we come from such different perspectives on musicals and animated films in general.
You make me review Frozen. I'm giving both a 0.
I have never said I would.
Good.
He hates Frozen. So that is going to do it for Encanto. So what are we going to do next time? Well, in honor of the arrival of Jurassic Park, or Jurassic World Dominion, this is not edited at all. We are going to...
I thought it was Domination. I'm smart.
Pretty sure it's Dominion.
It is Dominion!
Thought so. We are going to review all the Jurassic Park / World films leading up to it. So that's going to take us pretty much to exactly when it needs to be to make it to the movie release. So say hello to the Jurassic Park months. For the Great Movie Ride podcast, I'll add a T-Rex.
Rawr.
For the Great Movie Ride podcast, I've been Gaston.
I've been Jerryofdom.
And we'll see you in the movies.
Bye.
Goodbye, everybody.